Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. Now, the channel is shooting towards 100,000 subscribers, and your help would be very much appreciated. If you do enjoy this content, please hit the subscribe button, and also do a special move on the like button like you're in a Dragon Ball Z movie, and take 3 months to complete it. Also, drop a fireball comment down below in the description. All of these things help the channel immensely. Anyways, onto the story. It started with one ship, written by Eddie. Humanity arrived on the interstellar scene with more than a little chaos. Unlike most species, they didn't break free of their solar system and send out an attempt at an interstellar greeting from whatever primitive ship they used. Nor did they intercept some kind of external signal and take it as a sign to build for the stars. Rather, there was a crash landing. An old faster-than-light probe crashed into their colony on one of their other planets in their solar system. Humanity didn't really know what to do with it, but they worked out how to work the faster-than-light drive. Once they got that working, they built a shell around it, a big, airtight shell with all that they needed to live. Without direction, or really any understanding of what they were supposed to be aiming for, they hurled themselves into interstellar space, the FTL drive shooting them across the galaxy. As you would expect, it didn't go very well. But contrary to most common indirect FTL jumps, they didn't end up in dead space or inside a star or other gravitational anomaly. Rather, they appeared on the border of a rather aggressive species called the Krell. The Krell, in their infinite wisdom, decided the best course of action was to try and take this new species captive. Humanity responded by taking over 2 Krell ships that had been sent to capture them, mostly by being vicious bastards with no regards for the conventions of war or civil interactions. We only found out centuries later that at the time, humans were just recovering from a civil war, and most humans looked quite unfavorably on attempting to take prisoners with microwave and electrical weapons. Either way, the humans went from having 1 FTL-capable ship to 3. So, what did they do? They reversed the course of the original one, sending it home before crewing the other 2 and pointing them in random directions and repeating the process. Now, most species FTL drives have unique signatures, so when the Krell FTL drive flash was registered above the agricultural world in my own species space, the logical process was to attempt to ask what was going on. With no response but no active weapons, the standard procedure was to dock with the unknown vessel and attempt to board it. Well, the humans had seen the song and dance before, but this time they had some Krell to throw in the way first to see what we'd do. Being at war with the aggressive species, we detained them with extreme prejudice. The humans decided they didn't like this, and since we didn't have their language in our translators, any attempt at communication failed. The humans, now armed with their own weapons, the Krell weapons, managed to defeat the small boarding team and once again took control of the ship. So humanity had another FTL-capable ship. Well, what do? They finally work out how to direct the FTL, sort of. They jump both ships home, and rather than doing the sensible thing of informing their government that there are other species out there, they decided that they would recruit a mix of people, the most adventurous, the most self-sufficient, and those that craved combat and excitement. They loaded up these 2 ships with people and jumped out again. The worst part was when these ships ran out of supplies. Did they just starve or go dormant till another ship came along? No, they would jump to supply stations marked on the ship's maps or on top of shipping lanes and raid those supplies. They even took to taking some aliens with them. Those that fought with the most ferocity or matched the humans' mating preferences were offered a chance to join the crews of these ships. Plenty took them up on it. The most frustrating and confusing thing was that these stolen ships had no rhyme or reason to them. There was no organized raid. Each ship was a law unto itself. Some had mercy and would not kill you if you surrendered. Others butchered entire stations to acquire new ships and resources. The fact that the humans would paint these ships, some were painted bright red and white with a strange circular symbol running along the sides. Others were painted to be covered in what we have since learned was the mythical human creatures, dragons and the like. And some, the most brutal of them all, were black with human skeletons painted across them. We had a concept of pirates long before humans arrived, but they were slavers and mercenaries, not these bands of raiding lunatics. Now, you might be asking what happened to that second FTL ship that was mentioned earlier. Well, that's a very curious story. That ship encountered a tiny mining outpost in a system that was only remarkable because of its high density of base metals, iron, copper, and the like. Things that every race needs in huge amounts, but are abundant across the galaxy. That ship took that base and turned it into their own personal fiefdom, and as the humans learned to use FTL drives through the process of trial and error, and other species joining their crew and being familiar with the basic function, that tiny mining base became something of a haven. Any ship that was flying in human colors could dock at that base and take rest from their raiding, and they could be repaired, refit, and even sometimes acquire new crew. Humanity had joined the galactic community, but not with a hello or even we are here to conquer, but rather they joined through stealing ships from most known sentient species, then using those ships to raid other species. The intergalactic politics was a mess for several decades after that. People accusing others of raiding their bases, stealing ships, and all kinds of other things. Only when proof that these ships performing these actions were in turn stolen was given did the accusations calm down. All the while, more and more of these raider ships kept cropping up, from where no one really knew until someone decided to track the entire mass back, eventually asking the Krull Empire what happened. The Krull Empire at this point was in a mess itself. It turns out that the Krull's taste in food matched humanity's pretty closely, so that they were primary targets for raids. 4 decades of having your food shipments stolen to the point where mostly the military is spending time escorting and guarding the food is difficult for even the most powerful empires. After recovering the information from the Krull, the intergalactic community finally turned its eyes towards Earth, arriving to find just as much of a mess as the intergalactic community was, but at a much smaller scale. The human governments had gotten their hands on various tools and weapons from the raiders, purchased at immense prices to be used to enrich their economies or themselves. The weapons to be used against their foes, Earth itself, had become a near constant low-level war as humanity tried to wrest control of these world-changing devices from one another, and the populace wanted to live a life away from the constant threat of alien technology being used to wipe huge swaths of them from the planet. An escape that the fleets of stolen ships gladly provided. So, there wasn't even a central government to blame for these madcap humans, stealing ships and crews, then using the stolen ships and weapons to raid for supplies. There was not really any unified humanity any longer, just an ever-growing fleet of ships, each a law unto itself, and whose nature and temperament was dependent on the captain. There were humans who hadn't been born on Earth and saw this nomadic raiding culture as their way of life. The galaxy's nature and political scene changed immensely from the arrival of a single species. Trade is now calculated as a loss margin based on human activity in the areas it is passing through. Wars are now far slower and more expensive because you have no idea when or even if the human raiders will turn up and steal your supplies, or be paid by your foe to break your supply lines. Even simple mining expeditions have to be careful unless they want to risk coming across a human outpost and being inducted into the crews of other ships and their vessels repurposed into the boarding devices for acquiring new ships. This is how humanity joined the galactic community. They rebuilt a crashed ship, used it to steal 2 more, and they just went from there. It is only in recent years that we have finally acquired enough data, mostly through trading with these raiders, to finish putting together the full translation matrix and start communicating with these humans. The thing that makes it difficult is that non-humans born into their society are taught the human language as well as their mother tongue, and they view the human language as some kind of secret code to be used only amongst those in the know. The majority of humans are more than happy to remain as these space pirates, or as some call themselves, space Vikings. Some, however, seem to be closer to traders and merchants with no qualms about shoot first, negotiate later attitude. Humanity has joined up here in the stars, and they did it by stealing things, and they don't plan to stop. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Dragon Soup, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Caspar Arnold, Cam Maxwell, Sans the Skeleton, Light Jock, Dragzoon WRE, and Lord Azrakal. Thank you very much.